The Apollo space missions of the 1960s stirred America into a space fever. But as the country's finest astronauts hurtled skywards in conventional rockets, did the president know of the existence of sources and propulsion systems that were literally out of this world? Dr. Edgar Mitchell of the Apollo 14 mission and the sixth man to walk on the moon has carried out extensive investigations of the alleged saucer crashes as well as the question of alien contact. He met Lazar in 1991.
I tend to believe that his basic story is true, that he was exposed to what he thought were alien craft and attempts to engineer and back engineer. I think that his explanation of what's going on and his theory that he's utilizing is probably not on target. What I think is credible is the fact that he was there. Since the Roswell incident in 1947, that there was a cover-up, that was a valid incident, and that there has been an active investigation program, reverse engineering program, and cover-up associated with that since that time.
After working at S4 for several months and in clear violation of his top-secret clearance, Bob Lazar decided to tell his closest friend, Gene Huff, about his work at the base.
My reaction was to, without pressing him against his will, find out more, get him to tell me anything I could. And it wasn't disbelief. I think I was actually motivated to further read. I started investigating other books on UFOs and other researchers' information to see if anyone knew anything, and needless to say, they didn't know what Bob knew.
1 month later, in March 1989, Bob Lazar went one step further. He decided to take his friends to the desert and show them a flying disc test.
I remembered most of the days and times of testing. So I believe it was 8 or 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night, somewhere in March '89, I believe. We went out with Gene Huff, my ex-wife, and John Lear. Shortly after the flight time that I had recorded, white light came up off the ground and hovered, and then began doing radical step maneuvers and darting from one side of the sky to the other, doing some impossible flight characteristics. But at times the craft had glowed tremendously bright, where we thought, being miles and miles away, we thought there was something wrong and the craft was going to explode, so much so that we all got behind the car.
It actually came closer. It came down the mountain range toward us to where we could actually see it was elliptically shaped. It looked like something that, it's strange to explain. It looks like an explosion that starts to explode and stops and doesn't explode and dissipate. That's how bright the light is. Your brain interprets it as an explosion about to happen.
On his third visit with his friends to observe the discs at night, Bob Lazar was arrested. He was taken to an unknown location for interrogation and never returned to Area 51.
They threatened my wife. They threatened to kill my wife. They said they'd stop at nothing. They said they thought they made that very clear. They couldn't believe that I had taken anyone out there to show them that, much less left with information like the flight test data, and wanted to know what else I had said, who else I had told specifically.
Security agents from the OFI, the Office of Federal Investigation, had been witnessed doing random security checks at his house. There was almost no question in anyone's mind, anyone in Bob's immediate life who talked with him on the telephone that his phone was tapped. I mean, strange things would happen on Bob's phone and really continue to this day.
Dennis Mariani, who was my supervisor, called, and all he said was, "Do you have any idea what we're going to do to you now?" And that was the end of the phone call. They were crazy. They really were. They were completely out of control.
When you go to work out at those locations, you sign away your constitutional rights. You sign a piece of paper saying that if you violate your security agreement and you discuss programs that you're working on without a trial, without right of appeal, you're going to go to Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary for 20 years. That's a real big incentive to keep your mouth shut.
We had an engineer who worked at this TV station who, before he was here, had worked at Area 51 and had seen one of these craft under a tarp. Walked into a place he probably shouldn't have been. I arranged to do an interview with him. He lives in another city, in another state. He agreed reluctantly as long as I would block out his face. Well, we make the arrangements on the phone. The interview is supposed to happen the next day. He gets up, goes to work. There are two men in a car outside of his house talking into a radio. They follow him to work. When he gets out of work, they follow him home. No interview. I mean, it happened again and again and again. Same scenario.
It has been very difficult to talk about this. It's almost like every time I relate the story, it's a little easier. But when I first started talking about it, it was like my mouth didn't even want to form the words, and the sound didn't even want to come out of my throat. So I can only guess from that there was a very strong suggestion given to me not to talk about this, not to remember it, and if I did remember it, not to ever talk about it to anyone.
This man is a 71-year-old mechanical engineer who, like Bob Lazar, claims to have worked at Area 51. He started working there in the 1950s on a flying disc simulator built to train US pilots. He said he's been given permission to talk to us about certain specific aspects of his work, but asked us not to reveal his identity.
We received the disc from extraterrestrials. This particular one that I had to work on, or did work on, was from the Kingdom Crash. And that was later on taken to a Nevada test site where, at the time, I didn't know.
Were there any alien bodies recovered?
No bodies. There were 4 live, feeling good guys.
4 live extraterrestrials?
4 live, feeling good extraterrestrial type individuals, yes.
And where were those 4 extraterrestrials taken?
Initially they were taken to New Mexico. And then several months later they were taken to the Nevada site. One of the things I worked on was a flying disc simulator to train pilots to fly this strange looking craft designed for humans to fly, not for any extraterrestrials to fly.
His most fantastical claim was that he worked at Area 51 with an alien codenamed J-Rod for 16 years on this simulator project.
J-Rod is a gray alien, about 5'4". His role was only as a translator, scientific translator. That was all. If we wanted to put something in the place of what they had, he had to agree with it. I would have a question, and I would bring it up in my mind, just how I wanted to present it with him, and he'd already know that I had this question, and he would already have the answer for me. And if he responded, it would be in my voice. And you wouldn't even open your lips. It is possible that he and a few thousand others are working on the project, either here or elsewhere.
Is this a few thousand other greys?
A few thousand other greys like himself.
The nearest town to Area 51 is Rachel, population 150, and home to the most famous bar and grill in Nevada, the Little Alien. The local residents have seen their highway truck stop turned into the UFO and ET Center of America. Tourists flock to Rachel to scan the skies in the hope of having a sighting. For all the hype, the sightings of bizarre lights in the sky do continue. Local resident Chuck Clark has had many unexplainable sightings.
The most remarkable sighting that I've had in the last 3 years took place